No one has more state pride than New Mexicans. The vibrant culture, bold flavors, unique history, and dramatic landscapes under our Zia sun are like no other. And the people of New Mexico are a rare breed. As diverse as we are, together we breathe life and soul into this high desert land. A land that promises adventure. I'm Michael Newman, and as your host, I'll be taking you with me as I seek out the best the land of enchantment has to offer.
New Mexico, it feels like home to me. It feels so true. It's time well spent when I spend it with you.
Thanks for watching another episode of New Mexico True Television. I'm your host, Michael Newman. In this episode, we're exploring the northern half of El Camino Real. Starting in Albuquerque, we work our way up to Santa Fe along the northern stretch of El Camino Real, taking in plenty of history, culture, and cuisine along the way. In the heart of Old Town in Albuquerque, just south of I-40 and east of Rio Grande Boulevard, is the Rattlesnake Museum. A unique and small museum tucked in the southeast corner of the plaza, it houses the largest collection of different species of live rattlesnakes in the world. Pulling from North, Central, and South America, this collection hosts more different species than the Bronx Zoo, the San Diego Zoo, and National Zoo all combined. Having appeared on 27 television shows on networks like the Disney and Discovery channels, and hosting nearly 300 field trips a year, this is undoubtedly a popular spot, but this is my first visit. And let me say right off the bat, I had no idea there were so many varieties of rattlesnakes, 31 in this museum alone. And from all the exhibits and artifacts here, even those of us with phobias of snakes and squirmy reptiles can still enjoy and get a better understanding and appreciation for these snakes. For one, while each of these rattlers is behind a protective glass, I learned that even in the wild, we are far more dangerous to these animals than they are to us. In fact, they will make every effort to avoid us. They're actually shy creatures. Often, snake bites occur when someone is trying to capture, kill, or handle the snake, and the bite is simply a defensive maneuver. And in the case of rattlesnakes, the rattle is a tool of communication. They use it as a warning sign to alert animals and people of their location. Despite the bad rap they get, they aren't aggressive and they really don't want to hurt us. In meeting with the founder and director of the museum, Bob, even more myths were dispelled.
There are a lot of old wives' tales and a lot of urban myths, probably more so than truths. Things like telling the age of a rattlesnake. You cannot do that by counting rattle segments, not even close. They get a new rattle segment every time they shed their skin, not once a year. And they do lose segments. They're made of keratin, it gets brittle, pieces break off, and baby rattlesnakes are not more dangerous than adult rattlesnakes.
Really? I always thought that was true.
Oh, boy, I don't know who's passing that around, but they've done a good job. Yeah, baby rattlesnakes have a very small amount of venom, very tiny fangs. They will bite and defend themselves and inject venom, but so little that it's not particularly dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I learned something today.
And on and on and on.
And what do you think it is? Because there's this, like you said, there's this weird curiosity, fascination. What do you think it is about snakes that kind of create that feel for people around them?
Yeah. Well, I think they're so different. The lack of arms and legs is a start. They don't have eyelids, so it always appears that they're staring. Of course, they move in that undulating serpentine fashion, and something about the difference between mammals and these special reptiles make them an attraction in themselves.
Right. They're super distinct. That's what I think. Like, there's nothing, like you said, serpentine. The word serpentine comes from the serpent. There's nothing like it. It stands on its own. So when people come here, what do you hope they get out of their experience when they come?
Well, I hope that the people that have a fear of rattlesnakes start to get over that. These are shy animals.
Right.
They're not after people. We're not food for them. In the wild, they tend to sit still and quiet. We probably pass by them most often. They protect our crops. They protect us from diseases that might be carried by rodents.
And not to mention the venom being used for, different research and for things that help humans, right?
Right. More and more we're learning that there could be components within the venoms of different animals, including snakes, that might be used in medicine. The saliva of the Gila monster is already being used to treat diabetic patients, and very successfully.
I certainly have a better understanding and appreciation of snakes than when I came through the door. Not to mention, I enjoyed the rare opportunity to stare down a snake face to face. They're just so cool to watch. So head on down to Old Town to meet them yourself. The National Hispanic Cultural Center in Albuquerque is an actual campus comprised of a museum, performing arts center, library and genealogy center, restaurant, and gift shop. It not only serves as a gateway to Hispanic history and culture, but its location in the historic neighborhood of Barreras makes it the perfect launch point into some of Albuquerque's most culturally rich Hispanic communities. At the entrance to the complex stands a large and intriguing structure known as a torreon, or tower. I'm meeting with the center's executive director, Rebecca, to hear the backstory on the torreon and its celebrated fresco. So Rebecca, when you walk around the torreon, you don't know exactly what is inside of it. It's like this beautiful, oddly shaped building. But when you come in, gorgeous, immense fresco is, just kind of blinds you. So what is the significance of the torreon, and why is it here?
Yeah, so it has definitely different levels of significance. In terms of its size, it's the largest concave fresco that we know of in North America. But the substantive significance of it is, of course, that it covers thousands of years of Hispanic history. And then what you capture as you look at it is a realization that Hispanic history is world history. And so it gives you those little pieces of the Iberian Peninsula and Mesoamerica.
I'm assuming all those things are contained into the myriad of images painted all over the walls. So what's the difference between like a regular mural and a fresco? Like what distincts the two?
A fresco would be a subset of a mural. This in particular is a bon fresco, which is a true fresco, meaning that it's made of a series of layers of plaster, starting from a more coarse mix of sand to a finer mix of sand. And then finally applying pigment onto it so that the water evaporates off and you have a binding between the color and the actual plaster. It's an incredibly labor-intensive process.
You can't just go up there and start painting. It's this step-by-step process. That's amazing. So, and it kind of takes you on this journey. So can you talk more about like where it's going? Because you see things from like Aztec, Mayan culture to you even see Arab kind of culture in as well. So it really is talking about a global movement, if you will, over thousands of years.
That's right. And our most contemporary image would be the beams up next to the heart. Those are representative of the beams that came from the World Trade Center after 9/11. So telling even our contemporary history.
So it's completely comprehensive. It's amazing. And so what experience are you trying to paint, literally and figuratively, for people to come in here?
Well, I think there's something amazing that happens to you when you come in here and you look up and you sort of spin around, and it's a little dizzying. And that's sort of the idea, is that the way that our cultures and our histories have mixed together is a little dizzying, and can't be laid out easily on a grid. And by sort of taking you off of your center of balance in order to experience the fresco, I think in many ways it puts you in the right place to really experience it and open your mind to the diversity of influences.
No, it's a very spectacular and it's immersive kind of experience. This fresco by Santa Fe native Federico Vigil certainly makes for an encapsulating introduction to the center. Having trained under the apprentices of Diego Rivera, Vigil carries on a rich tradition of fresco art, and to see one of his frescoes in person is something to be relished. Not to mention, it sets a high bar for all the other wonderful things you'll be experiencing while you are here. There's something happening here nearly every night, so check their events calendar before you head out. You might find something that's right up your alley. One of the things I really enjoyed about this place was the amount of art everywhere. When you go, definitely stop at one of the many exhibits or just admire some of the art in the hallways. Oh, and just as a heads up, if you want to go and see the amazing Torreon fresco, I would recommend you go on the weekend. Coming up, a place that served as an end to the journey but the beginning of our government. Find steals and deals for your next New Mexico vacation at newmexico.org. And now, here's another New Mexico true treasure. While there are a number of sites and museums devoted to the centuries-old history of El Camino Real, there are many locations along this trail that are alive and well. Perhaps the most accessible places to experience the influences of the Spanish colonists who journeyed this route are in the mission churches and Spanish plazas peppered along the trail. From Old Mesilla unto Socorro and into Santa Fe, in towns as small as Limitar or in the sprawl of Albuquerque, the architectural stylings and cultural heritage of our Spanish colonization are apparent everywhere you look. As New Mexicans, we may take for granted the living history that surrounds us on a day-to-day basis. Our plazas are centers of activity, locations we visit regularly. Some of our favorite restaurants or shops may be found in their peripheries. We may even go to Mass at these churches as part of our weekly schedule. But it's important to take note of how our everyday routines are set against a very rich historical backdrop. Not every plaza is the same. Each building has its own story. Different families lived in these spaces, ran businesses out of these storefronts, barricaded themselves behind these great doors during raids by neighboring tribes. Brave and hardy people created new lives for themselves in this land, and built beautiful, solid structures that have stood the test of time. Missionaries created new communities of believers, these churches being their gathering space, as well as a testament to their undying faith. Resources and talent from locals went into artwork and craftsmanship adorning the walls and nichos of these spaces. Remnants from El Camino Real are ever present, to the point that they have become absorbed and processed as everyday realities. And maybe that's what's so remarkable about El Camino Real, is how past and present have been so seamlessly interwoven. In our first 2 seasons, we've taken you all over the land of enchantment, to places we felt you would want to see and experience. Now it's your turn to share with us your New Mexico true treasures. All you have to do is get your smartphone and send an email or a 15-second video about why you think that place is a New Mexico true treasure. Who knows, we may even ask you to show us in person. Email your video to truetreasure@cliffdwellerdigital.com. Surprise and amaze us. We want to show our viewers your favorite spot and why you love New Mexico. In the heart of Santa Fe sits the Palace of the Governors, appropriately named as it was constructed in the early 1600s as Spain's seat of government for what is today the southwestern portion of the United States. With the different governing forces of the times, the palace changed hands over the years. You can only imagine if these adobe walls could talk. But as part of the New Mexico History Museum, the many eras of the building's life are represented in the collections you will find exhibited here. The Palace of the Governors houses more than 400 years of New Mexican history, from Spanish colonization to the Santa Fe Trail, the Civil War to the Rough Riders, and collections highlighting figures such as Kit Carson, Lew Wallace, D.H. Lawrence, Pancho Villa, and Juan de Oñate. This is a place where multiple visits will continue to enlighten and inform you, and it seems like the ideal place to get some more history on El Camino Real. I'm meeting with the museum's interim director, John, to gain his perspective on the trail. So John, can you tell me about some of the history of the Palace of the Governors?
Yes, well, the Palace of Governors started about 1610. So this is the oldest continuously inhabited public building in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So this was the building for the royal city here of northern New Spain.
Okay.
And it was also a place where not only governors but soldiers came to. It's a place where priests came to. And then settlers came here and then dispersed around northern New Mexico. You can imagine their relief when they finally came here after about 6 months of traveling over desert, over mountains, through some lands where there might have been hostile Native American attacks. And this was a safe haven for that end of the journey.
So John, take me back to what the El Camino Real was like back then, because this was the destination, but what was that experience? What was that journey like for people?
So it was 1,500 miles from Mexico City to Santa Fe, over deserts, over mountains. A good day's travel was about 12 miles. So just imagine, and you didn't ride. I mean, you didn't burden your horse by riding it. So you walked almost that whole 1,500 miles. Once you got here to Santa Fe, this was one of the most remote parts of the Spanish Empire around the whole world, because it took so long to get here. It was so difficult to get here. So people who came here had to be motivated to get here. So what were the reasons for coming here? Well, for some of them it was an opportunity hopefully to find gold or silver originally. That played out pretty quickly that there wasn't a whole lot of gold or silver here. Right. But it was a place to set up a settlement of their own, a hacienda, a place where they could grow the crops, raise livestock, raise a family. Maybe they had a failed business in Spain or Mexico and they wanted to get away from their creditors. Maybe they wanted to get away from the religious persecution of the order of the Inquisition. So maybe there were converted Jews in Spain who converted to Catholicism.
The crypto Jews.
Crypto Jews, exactly. And then they came to Santa Fe in northern New Mexico to get away from the Inquisition, and so settled here. So they were outsiders. Priests came here as well because they wanted to not only administer to the faithful, the Spanish and Mexican faithful, but they also wanted to convert Native Americans. So Santa Fe, northern Mexico, has been a place for outsiders to come throughout the centuries.
Wow. Everyone thinks, oh, the gold rush and everybody moved east to west, but a lot of people just have been here for so long.
And kind of along those lines, Michael, as you said, east to west kind of is our thought of migration. Back before the United States came into New Mexico, that route of migration was north to south, south to north, and that was along the Camino Real.
Okay.
That was the axis, north to south. If you wanted to go someplace that was the capital, you went down to Mexico City, you went south. That's where New Mexicans got their governance, that's where they got their architectural styles, their clothing styles. They looked south, not east. And then when the Santa Fe Trail came in 1821, that axis shifted from north-south to east-west. And then people in Santa Fe started looking east to the United States. But think of this, people were in the Palace of the Governors 200 years before the first person slept in the White House.
Wow.
And the colony of New Mexico and Santa Fe was started about the same time as the English colony in Jamestown.
Yeah, that gives you some perspective for sure. The Palace of the Governors is just one of the buildings comprising the New Mexico History Museum campus, so make sure to visit the new building of the museum behind the Palace of the Governors, and the living history exhibit of the Palace Press, also right off the interior courtyard. Don't miss the exposed excavated portions of the adobe puddled walls that were created during the Native American occupation of the palace from 1680 to 1692. Up next, we go local in Bernalillo. Do you take a lot of pictures on your New Mexico travels? Well, if you do, show us by hashtagging New Mexico True on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And now from the pages of New Mexico Magazine. Just 15 miles north of Albuquerque is the town of Bernalillo. Cutting through the center of town is Bernalillo's main street, Camino del Pueblo. But this is only the road's latest incarnation. Prior to modern times, it was El Camino Real, and in more recent history, Route 66. Starting as a small grouping of haciendas along the Rio Grande in the 1600s, this village's initial connection to the outside world was El Camino Real. And today, more than 400 years later, people venturing this historic stretch of road still come to Bernalillo from all over the globe, where they are greeted with its small town charm and hospitality. Numerous mom and pop shops line this main street, welcoming you as soon as you roll into town. I'm a big believer in going local, so I'm excited to check these places out. First up, the Range Cafe. Known for its funky local artwork and the most delectable baked goods you can find anywhere, the Range Cafe serves up down-home fare with a New Mexican flair. I had the chance to meet with Ann, who has been with the restaurant for over 19 years. If anyone can give me the backstory on this place, it will be her.
So their very first place they opened up was a little place down the street. Might have had 15 tables.
Wow.
And the first day they opened, they sold out before dinner and they had to close.
And that was a good sign that
was a good sign that like they had a good idea. They had the right idea of what the community needed, what people were looking for in the area. So.
And what is it like being in Bernalillo, because it is such a small community?
I think that's one of my favorite parts of being here, is that you really feel you're part of a community, part of what's going on here. The community really embraced the restaurant, especially if you want to know the history. Their very first location had a fire after it had been open about 3 years, and the town people got together and had a progressive dinner to raise money to help the restaurant reopen.
This is just a testament to how important it was to have something like that here, right?
Right.
And just as the community has embraced the range, the restaurant reciprocates the love, as evidenced by the artwork featured on the walls. Nearly every element of the decor has been handcrafted by their neighbors. This place has an aesthetic that is unmatched.
I guess that's what I hear. They just love the feeling, and sometimes people can't pinpoint what that feeling is, but they just love the feeling when they walk in.
Right. When I hear the range, it's a meeting point. People know that, between here in Santa Fe, dignitaries, local people, farmers, ranchers, doesn't matter, everybody can come to the range.
Everybody's welcome at the range.
Yeah.
When people come in, I've been cleaning my house or moving, they kind of feel bad. It's like, no, it's like, this is your home. Come on in, no matter what.
Even in my travels, when you go to a mom and pop place and the place makes you feel at home. And it's like, I'm so far away from home, but I can find my place in this little small town.
Right.
I can certainly attest, any traveler will feel home on the range. Now, what to do after a satisfying meal? Antiquing sounds like a good way to go. Down the road from the Range Cafe is Camino Real Antiques, and by the looks out front, there should be some real treasures inside. I had the chance to sit down with the woman who is keeping the idea of trade and exchange alive on El Camino Real, the shop's owner, Fawn.
So it's interesting that you have a lot of these old relics that people came to New Mexico for, and that you're still kind of living that dream, you know.
Yeah.
So was that a big thing for you, being on the El Camino Real?
Well, I think that was a big part of the draw here, but the first one that I rented my shop from, I was going to name the store Route 66, and she said, "Oh, El Camino Real is so much more romantica." And I thought, there it is.
There it is.
How can you argue with romance?
No, absolutely not. And what has the interaction been with people?
We do have people from every state have been in here, and from 10 different countries, a lot of interest in the old Route 66. So, and then there's also an incredible interest and fascination with all the pueblos, and we were surrounded by 7 different pueblos here in Bernalillo.
Right.
And we've sold stuff to Cowboy and Indian Museum in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And so some of our stuff, so we are international as well.
So you're keeping it alive.
We're trying.
And any interesting stories of people that have come into the store?
So many, but the one that really sticks out of my mind that I like to share is there was a French couple, and they stopped in here and they were looking for a Santo Domingo medicine man that they had done a sweat lodge with, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago. And one of my local Vietnam vets was in here also hawking some of his wares. He overheard the conversation. He pulled out this little scroll where he had written down some of his important contact numbers. And on that list was the number and name of a San Domingo Pueblo Indian who was also a police officer, and he knew that he provided sweat lodges. And so we called the officer. He met this French couple out in the parking lot, and off they drove into the sunset.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
And like of all places, you know, this was the place that they found that connection with.
It's always felt since I bought this place like a hub, the hub of a wheel, and just to enable those kinds of interactions to happen. And it has always been a congregation place. Yes.
Bernalillo also has a history of having a lot of bars in like on one strip, right?
Correct. I think since this was the thoroughfare from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, that people needed to wet their whistle, and so there were at least 18 bars, is what I've heard. And there were also 18 gas stations.
And just like a 4-mile radius.
Bernalillo Main Street is 1.3 miles.
Impressive, I must say. And while the number of bars may be fewer today than in yesteryear, no need to worry. One of our state's best watering holes is still right here on Camino del Pueblo, and that is Silva Saloon. You do not want to leave town before ducking into this Cheers-style bar to talk with owners Felix and Stephanie Silva, a father-daughter duo that has kept the family business running for over 80 years. One thing's for sure, in this town, there are no strangers. It's impossible to leave here without a few new friends. When at the Ranch Cafe, make sure to check out their Walls of Fame, featuring signed plates from famous guests. From presidents to actors, athletes and musicians, it's as close as you can get in New Mexico to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. At Camino Real Antiques, if Johnny is working, see if he'll play a tune on his hand-carved flute. And when at Silva Saloon, be sure and ask Felix Silva about his dad's bootlegger days during the Prohibition. We're so glad you could come along with us on this stretch of El Camino Real, and hopefully inspire you to get out and hit the road. And with that being said, what are you doing next weekend?